This is the first mini lecture for Marriage and Family, fall of 2020. We'll be covering chapters 1 and 2. If you have access to a printer, it might be helpful to print a copy of the outlines that are on Canvas and use them to follow along during the lecture to take some notes. If it's in the outline or if I talk about it in the mini lecture, it's likely to be a question on the quiz. So it's a good idea to take some notes. So the first thing we're going to talk about in chapter 1 is the fact that 90% of the people in the United States do get married and have children at some point in their life. Now, I know for a lot of you, you may be thinking, oh no, not me. But the statistics say that 90% or greater of the people in the United States do get married and have children at some point in their life. So it's a good idea for us to try to do it the best that we can. Some of us grew up in very stable, strong families, and some of us didn't, but there's still a lot of things that we can do to have the best family possible when it's our turn to have our children. So one of the first things that the author of the book talks about is that not enough has really been studied about good families. We tend to look at the dysfunctional families and we watch Jerry Springer and we kind of laugh at those people and think, oh my gosh, how crazy. But we haven't studied healthy families as much. So Cox really spent a lot of time studying healthy families. And what he found is that healthy families have the same list of 8 things. And these qualities are the things that make a good, healthy, strong family. Now, the first quality that he has in the beginning of chapter 1 is commitment. If you don't have commitment in anything in your life, it's not going to be successful. But obviously, in a family and in a marriage, commitment has to be number one. Now, what does that mean? It means that you are going to hang in there no matter what. It means that you are devoted to your marriage, to your family. It means that you're going to hang in there even when things get really, really, really hard. So you have to be at a point where you know, or feel at least, that you can be that committed. If you don't have that, it will never last. So commitment is the most important thing. Now, you have to be committed, but you have to find someone else that is too. So how do you find someone that will also be highly committed? What are the things that you would look for in a person that would be very committed? And I know when you're young, or maybe even sometimes when you're older, we look for nice butt, kisses good, but this isn't the list that you want to be looking for. When you look for someone you want to be married to or have children with, you need to really look for things in their life that would show you that they have been committed to something in the past. Now, what kind of things are we talking about? Well, past relationships. Have they been in a relationship for longer than a month? Have they had a job longer than a few months? Have they finished school? Because school is very difficult. Have they finished any of their college? Have they finished or almost finished their AA degree? Or are they close to finishing their 4-year degree? That takes a lot of hard work and commitment. So, and what about their other family relationships, to their parents, to their siblings? Are those committed? Do they have good relationships there? So those are the kind of things you'd want to look for in someone that you would want to be married to, have children with, that would tell you that at least you know they've learned commitment through some of their past experiences. So be looking for those things when you choose a partner. You have to be committed, but you have to find someone else that can be committed also. Now, the second thing that they say is important is appreciation. And this may sound like something trivial, but it isn't. What do we mean by appreciation in a marriage and family? Appreciation is acknowledging the hard work and the effort that people are making. And if you don't do that in your marriage and in your family, there are some bad things that usually happen. Now, some of us grew up in families where appreciation was verbalized or shown. Some of us didn't. But if you didn't grow up in a family where people showed each other appreciation or told each other that they appreciated each other, you can learn how to do that. And it won't seem comfortable at first, but over time it gets easier. But you can't do it every day, but you need to be doing it consistently. So, what do we mean by that? It means that when you notice that your partner or your children are making an effort or have done something special, you thank them. You verbally tell them how much you appreciate it. You tell them you love them. And again, some of us did not grow up in families where they verbalized that, but you can start to do it. And it does get easier once you begin to do that. And what's interesting is when you begin to do that, usually some of the other people in the family will feel more comfortable and maybe start doing it too. So you need to verbalize those things. And obviously, when someone's making an effort, you need to um, acknowledge it. And the other thing is too that if you don't, if you don't acknowledge what the effort that people are making in your family, what usually happens, people get frustrated and they get angry and they get hurt and they feel like, well, if I'm not being acknowledged and no one even notices, then why am I doing this? And frequently they'll stop making so much effort. Or what's even worse is they could start looking for it somewhere else. We all love to be appreciated. We all love to be told that we're great. That's a human, um, character trait. So if you're not being appreciated in any way, told that your effort is acknowledged, frequently people will look other places. Now, what about your partner? Well, partners will go find it. Someone at work, someone at school will start noticing things. And it's awfully hard to not stray and go to where the attention is. And that doesn't mean it's okay to have an affair, because it isn't. But that tends to be one of the reasons why people do have affairs, is because they're not being appreciated by their partners. But what about your children? What happens when they don't feel appreciated? And I know for a lot of us, for those of us that have children, a lot of times we tend to get on to our kids about what they're not doing. Your room isn't clean enough. Your grades aren't good enough. And frequently we don't tell our children enough how important they are and how much we appreciate them, and that we're just lucky to have them at all. Not everyone gets children. And so in order to make your kids feel appreciated, that needs to be verbalized to them, how much you love them, how lucky you are to have them. And if they don't get that at home, where do they go to find it? Well, unfortunately, they may go to a good place, a good person to find it, but frequently they go to bad places, such as the neighbor next door who's smoking pot after school, or a gang, which is not a good place to go to get it. Or unfortunately, one of the really bad places that sometimes neglected children go to is sexual predators. And there is a letter on the internet from a sexual predator that uh, wrote a letter to parents that do not appreciate and pay attention to their kids. And in that letter, he said, "Thank you for not telling your kids you love them. I will. Thank you for not doing their homework with them. I will. And thank you for not putting them in your lap, because I will." And he was trying to make the point that these are the kids that sexual predators target, the kids that are not appreciated and loved at home. So you can see how important appreciation is. If you don't show this consistently, then frequently people in your family will go look other places, and usually that's not a very good thing. So appreciation is extremely important. The third thing is communication. Communication is so important that the book devotes a whole chapter to it. So we'll be talking about this in a few weeks, a lot more. But what they know about communication is that families that don't communicate well tend to have more violence. Because what happens when you can't communicate? Problems cannot get solved. You can't make progress. Things never get resolved. And when things don't get resolved and problems don't get fixed, they tend to get worse. They don't just go away. They don't just disappear. They usually get worse. So if you're not able to communicate and resolve things, they build and they build and they build until, unfortunately, they explode. And that's when people do things and say things that can really be damaging. So communication is so important, and you don't have to have a 10, but a 5. Um, Communication is very difficult, and we'll talk a lot about why that is later on in chapter 5. But for now, just realize that communication is crucial to have a healthy family. The fourth thing that is a healthy quality of a good family is the desire to spend time together. Now, obviously, why would you marry someone if you didn't want to spend time with them? Well, because in the beginning, and we'll talk about that when we talk about chapter 3, when you fall in love, everything looks perfect. But no one is perfect. But you want to find someone that you have some things in common with, that you can spend some time with, that you enjoy each other's company. It doesn't have to be expensive, doesn't have to be expensive trips, even a bike ride around the neighborhood or game night once a week. But you need to have some things that you really enjoy doing together. So you want to find someone that you have things in common with. And with your children, you again want to include them. Not always, because you and your partner need time to do things, just the two of you, but children also need to be included in doing fun activities within the family. And the fifth thing is good, strong values. Every family has different values. They don't all have to be the same, but they need to be positive and healthy. So, what are some of the values? And you may think to yourself, what are some of the good, healthy things that my family taught me? So, things like honesty, loyalty, hard work, education, the importance of education. Those are all things that we get taught by our family, by example, and they don't have to be the same as your next door neighbor, but they do need to be positive and healthy. And if your family has quite a few of those that are positive and healthy, then you've got good values. Number 6 is the ability to deal with crisis. And this is so important because as we go through life, we all have crises. We all have difficulties. And I wish right now that I could have a magic wand and I could tap each of you on the head and say, none of you will ever have a problem. But we know we can't do that. So the older you get, and some of you may have already had quite a few hurdles in your life, but as you get older, you definitely begin to have a lot of hurdles. And so being able to deal with crisis is so important in a family. And not all families deal with crisis in a healthy way. Some families get into fights, some will get into substance abuse and try to avoid it. But what healthy families do is they unite, they come together. So, a healthy family, no matter where they are, if they know that their family members are in a crisis, they will come together and they will try to support each other in a positive way. Now, number 7 is resilience. And resilience means the ability to get up and keep going. It means that when you're knocked down, you can get up and keep going. And especially with what we're going through right now, this pandemic and having everything online, resilience, you can see where this is so important. And obviously, number 6, the ability to deal with the crisis. We're kind of in a crisis right now. So you can begin to see how important these qualities are. So resilience is being able to get up when you're knocked down and keep going and keep trying. And number 8, and this may be a term you haven't heard, but it's called self-efficacy. And what that means is that you believe in yourself and you believe in your family. And you believe that no matter what, you will get through your hard times and that you will make it through. So self-efficacy is also so important to have faith in yourself and your family that no matter what, you will stick together and you will get through your hard times or your difficulties. So those are the 8 qualities. This also is going to be important because your first homework assignment is to look through this list of 8 things and write or after each quality, tell me if it was weak or strong in your family of origin. And family of origin, we're going to talk about in just a minute, that those are the people that raise you. So for the family that you grew up in, for your first homework assignment, I want you to go through that list and tell me for each quality, tell me if it was weak or strong in your family of origin. And then maybe give me one example. In other words, if you, number one is commitment. And so if your parents have been married for 25 years, 30 years, they're still married, you would put strong. My parents are still married after 30 years. That's just an example. So I want you to go through each one of those. And again, tell me if it was weak or strong in your family that you were raised in, and maybe give me one example of why you feel that way. Now, some of the other things in chapter 1, again, the definition of family of origin. Who are these people? These are the people that raise us. Most of us are raised by our birth family, our parents, our birth mom and dad. But some of us today are raised by other people for different reasons. Maybe there's a divorce. Maybe someone unfortunately dies. There's all kinds of reasons why there are occasions when people are not raised by their family of origin. But family of origin are so crucial. These are the people that raise us have more effect on us than anyone else in our life, for the good or for the bad. These are the people that give us all of the values, all of the ideas and things that we learn start with family of origin. So these are the most important people in your life. And even after you're grown and gone and you may live far away from them, or even sometimes after they pass away, those people are always with you. They will be inside you for the rest of your life. So these are the people that are the most important people really in your whole life. And you will be that to your children. So that's why it's so important to take a look at all of these qualities and how we can be the best example, how we can be a good, strong family of origin for our children. And then, what are the strengths of the enduring, intimate relationships that we hopefully get from our family? And the first one, it says, cope with adversity. Adversity means hard times. So families that are healthy seem to have the ability to cope with those hard times better. And then the second one is promote each other's happiness and welfare. In a healthy family, it's not just about me, it's about each other. So in a healthy family, you care not just about your happiness, but you care about each other's happiness and welfare. And then number 4 is spiritual wellness. Now, when we hear the word spiritual, sometimes we think that means church, and it can mean church, but it can also mean just a sense of purpose. Why am I here? What is my purpose in life? And that, if you feel a sense of purpose, if you really believe that there is a reason why you are here on this earth, then you will have a better sense of spiritual wellness. And again, where does that start? It comes from our family, that you're important, that your existence is important. And so that is what we call spiritual wellness. And then the last is that it lessens the impact of illness on its members. Now, it seems almost amazing, but people that are from healthy families tend to go to the hospital less. They tend to go to the doctor less. They tend to have less mental health issues. Now, there are some exceptions. There are people that are born with genetic problems or a mental health diagnosis. But in general, people from healthy families are healthier physically also. So these are all the reasons why having a healthy family are so very important. And also, the book says that not enough has been written about successful families. Again, we said we like to watch Jerry Springer and laugh, but Cox decided that he was going to study healthy families. So in this semester, we're going to be focusing on what makes a good family. Well, why is this important? Because the book says that the quality of life in our communities and in our own society really depends on the quality of life in our families. The healthier and more stable families we have, the healthier and more stable communities and societies that we have. So having A healthy, good family is good for the people in that family, but it ripples out. It's good on everyone around us. So, yes, it is so crucial to have a healthy family. Um, and the last thing is there are certain things that families do provide, but the basic functions, and obviously to provide shelter, food and shelter for each other, um, and hopefully to provide love and support. But also, there's a process called socialization. And the people that are primarily responsible for socializing children are parents and family. And what does that mean, socialization? It means teaching children the rules of society. How do we do that? Well, we do it a lot by example. Um, but are we born knowing the rules? No, we're not. The rules are things that we need to be taught. So basically, it's teaching the rules of society to children so they can go out and function and contribute and be healthy members of society. So it's teaching them good values. It's teaching them right from wrong. Now, this is also called, in many ways, the development of a conscience. And what is a conscience? It's knowing right from wrong. And when do we develop conscience? We develop conscience from the time we're born to about the time of 6 or 7 years old. By that time, most of our primary values and um, the basis of our socialization has been learned. And if it hasn't been learned very well by that time, sometimes even earlier, you're going to see people that are defined as sociopaths. These are people that do not have a properly developed conscience. They don't feel empathy for other people. They break the rules and they don't care if they hurt other people. As long as they get what they want, that's all they really care about. So, to have a healthy society, we need children that are socialized properly. We do not need people that are going around hurting everybody and hurting each other and hurting themselves. So, socialization. Now, this is a tough thing in today's world because unfortunately, we see a lot of people that don't seem to have the best values, that do break the rules. And what's difficult is that parents will try to teach their kids the right rules, and then their children go to school or go out the door in the neighborhood and they see people that are breaking the rules. And so this is going to be very difficult. It's one of the most important things that families do is to properly socialize their children, but it is not easy. And I think for those of us that are parents, we know already how difficult it is to keep reinforcing those rules. Now, some children seem to learn these rules pretty easily. Some will buck you. The kids that are strong-willed may really want their own rules. But as parents, one of the most important jobs is to really impress upon your children that they cannot just go around doing whatever they want to, that they have to follow certain rules of society. And obviously, one of the primary ones is that we don't hurt each other. We don't take you don't take things from people that don't belong to you. You don't steal, you don't murder. I mean, these are basic rules in our society, and children need to really have established those by the time they're probably 6 or 7 years old. So the first years of life are so important for families in terms of the socialization process. So that covers most of chapter 1. Now, for chapter 2, we're going to talk about the different kinds of families, and there are different kinds of families today. The family has changed. One of the first things we see in the family is the size of the family. Over the last few decades, the size of the family has decreased. And if you look at that, why? Why is the size of the family decreased? Well, there's several reasons. One of them is birth control. 100 years ago, there was no birth control the way there is today. And so if you got married and had sex, you usually had a lot of children. So some of you may have families where you have grandparents or maybe even parents who have 10 brothers and sisters. And so there are some countries and some cultures where birth control really isn't available. And 100 years ago, it really wasn't available. So Over the years with birth control and with that being used more often, you see the size of the family decreasing because people can have a normal sexual relationship and not get pregnant every time. But the other reason is if you look at what's happened in our world, when people 100 years ago mostly lived on farms, ranches, dairies. Today, there are some people that still live on those ranches and dairies, but most of them don't anymore. So, what happened 100 years ago? Industrialization. Around the turn of the 20th century, you saw factories and cities being industrialized. And what happened was people began to leave their farms and their ranches and their dairies and go to the city to work in factories. And as that happened, they didn't need a lot of children anymore to help on the farm. They didn't need a lot of children to help on the dairy. And it got more and more expensive to raise children. And so, given the option, a lot of people have chosen not to have very large families. And so, today, the size of the family has definitely decreased over the last few decades. Now, there are two different types of families. And um, the two main forms that you see today, they call them nuclear and extended. And again, this kind of goes back to what we just talked about, the change in the family structure when people left the farms and dairies and ranches and went to the cities. Because before that, when people were living on ranches and farms, most people lived around extended family. Extended means mom, dad, brothers, sisters, and other relatives like grandmothers, grandfathers, cousins, aunts, and uncles. And 100 years ago, there wasn't very much transportation. So most people lived and died living near their extended family members. Well, how did that affect them? Well, those people influenced the children. They were a part of their life almost every day. Some of them even lived in the same house, on the same farm. Some families still live that way today. But a lot of families, again, as industrialization became larger and families left the farms and went to the cities, you saw that they may see their extended family occasionally, but they don't see them every day anymore. Maybe they don't live close by anymore. So then the new form of family that began to develop was called the nuclear family. And the nuclear family is just mom, dad, and kids. Well, what are the differences and what are the pluses and minuses? In the nuclear family, with just mom, dad, kids, you have more independence. You have more freedom. And those can be positive things. But the downside is that you don't have a lot of family support, as much family support. So with nuclear families, you have the independence, you have maybe a little bit more freedom, but you don't have that family support. With the extended family, and you have lots of family members living close by, you have more people to get involved, and sometimes you see more drama and more meddling. But the positive about extended families is that you have more support. So nuclear and extended families are almost opposites in some ways. What's good about one is maybe not so good about the other one. So what's important is to think when you decide to pick a partner, it's really a good idea to take a look at whether or not they were raised in the same type of family that you were. If you have a person that was raised in a nuclear family and they're just used to mom, dad, and the kids, and they marry someone from an extended family where that person is used to lots of relatives around all the time, you can imagine what happens to the person who's used to having a lot of privacy and independence, and all of a sudden they've got all these relatives that are over at their house every day. So that can be a big problem. So it's always a good thing to just notice what kind of family structure did someone that you would like to spend your life with, how were they raised? Were they raised in a nuclear family or an extended family? Because those two family types are very different. Sometimes you can blend them a little bit. Sometimes you can work it out even if you were not raised in the same type of family. But it makes it easier to understand each other if you were raised in a similar family. Now, what are the reasons for the family in general? Just so one of the facts is that um, families are in every society in the world. There's been some kind of family structure in every society all over the world. And so they say in the book that this is universal. The family is universal, which means again that some form of family structure is practiced in every culture and society all over the world. Now, that doesn't mean they're all the same because they're not all the same. It's also the basic unit of every society. So it gives society structure, and what the book says is it gives societies order and stability. And so, basically, it is the basic unit of society that is practiced all over the world that helps to give us more stability and structure. Now, there are different kinds. In our in Western cultures, you have the what they call monogamy. Now, that means that you're going to be married to one person at a time. And so, in the United States and in Canada and most of Europe, um, that is what is legal. But actually, in 70% of the world, they practice something called polygamy. Polygamy means that you can be married to more than one person at a time. Now, the most successful type of polygamous families are one father, many wives, one husband, many wives. That tends to work better than one wife, many husbands. The reason for that is that if you have one wife, many husbands, you'll always know who the mother is because she's carrying any children, any babies if she gets pregnant, but you won't always know who the father is unless you do a DNA test. And so frequently, men do not want to take responsibility for children that they're not sure are theirs. If you have one husband, many wives, obviously, again, the wives, if one of the wives gets pregnant, they will know she's the mother. But if there's only one husband, he'll always know that he's the father of any children. And he's much more likely to take responsibility and care for them if he is for sure that they are his. So you can see why one husband, many wives works better than one wife, many husbands. There are only one or two cultures in the world that allow one wife, many husbands. The majority of polygamous families are one husband and many wives. And again, this is practiced in many, many cultures around the world, but obviously it may not seem normal to us because in Western cultures we've been raised that you can only be married to one at a time. Now, what is the definition of the family? Now, we're going to go by what the book has as the definition that the Census Bureau has. And if you know, we're taking a census right now in the year 2020. Every 10 years, the United States takes a census of who is living in every household. And so the Census Bureau from the federal government has a definition of what family is. And their definition is a group of people related by birth, marriage, or adoption that reside, which means live, together. Now, under that definition, there are several different types of family structures. And we're going to go over those. Primarily, again, in the last 50 years, there have been a lot more different types of family structures. About 50 years ago, the primary family structure that you saw under that definition was mom, dad, and kids. But there have been a lot of changes over the last 50 years. So now we're seeing different types of family structures. All of them can be good families. Some of them may have more issues, more problems than others, but all of them can be good families. If they have the 8 things that good families need, and they are teaching their children good socialization, and if they're able to establish closeness, connection, intimacy, then all of them can be good families. Again, mom, dad, kids is the one that obviously most people would like to shoot for as long as they're good parents. You can have a mom, dad, kids family structure, but if the parents are alcoholics, then that's not going to be a good family. But if you have mom, dad that are good, stable, healthy parents, that is probably a good one to shoot for. But you've got a lot of other types of family structures today. In the list on the outline, it talks about blended families. And the other word for this is reconstituted families. What is a blended family? It's when two people have been married or had a relationship before, possibly had children, and then they leave those relationships or marriages. They find someone else and get remarried or establish a new relationship, and they may bring any children that they had previously into that new relationship or marriage. So they're trying to blend all of the people together, frequently children from a previous relationship. This can be a good family, but we will talk about this family structure a lot more later, because step families, then it creates a step family. And so you have a lot more people and a lot more issues to deal with. But again, it can be a good family. And then an adoptive family. For a lot of different reasons today, you've got children that cannot be raised by their birth parents. What are the reasons? Well, maybe they had a child out of wedlock before they were married and felt they could not raise that child. Maybe there was a death. There's a lot of reasons why uh, parents choose adoption or children are adopted. But can this be a good family? Well, it definitely can be, again, if it has the good things, the 8 things that families need. And if the parents are good, stable people, teaching them good values and good socialization. Are there issues that adopted kids have that other children don't? Yes, there are. But and we will talk about this again later in the semester. But they can be very, very good families. And then extended families. Sometimes you do see grandparents. You see that much more often than you used to. You see grandparents, maybe even older siblings raising children. Again, that can be because of a death, a divorce, incarceration. There's a lot of different drugs and alcohol issues. There's a lot of reasons why sometimes other relatives in the family raise the children. Can they be good families? Of course they can. But again, there's issues. With extended family, sometimes, especially with grandparents, if they're raising the children and become very attached to those children, and then the birth parents come back and want the children back, it can cause conflicts. But it can also be wonderful to know that if for some reason the children cannot be raised by their birth parents, that there are extended family members that love those children that are able to care for them. So that can be a healthy family. And then, as a couple of years ago, as many of you know, the United States made same-sex marriage legal. And so you've got same-sex couples now that get married, and that would, by definition, that would follow the definition of a family related by birth, marriage, or adoption. So same-sex couples now can get legally married, and some of them have had children from other relationships. There are um, people that maybe are primarily homosexual, but they have had heterosexual relationships, and maybe they have had a child through one of those. Or maybe they've adopted a child, or maybe they've used a surrogate. There are same-sex couples that do want and have children. Can they be good parents? Well, of course they can, if they're good people. Again, have the 8 qualities that good families need, and are teaching good values and good socialization skills. Will they have issues that other families don't have? Yes, they probably will. But can those be dealt with? Yes, they can. And they can be loved and be very good families. And then the single parent family. Now, the single parent family has gotten to be so much more prevalent and common than it used to be. Since 1970, the number of children being raised in single parent families has tripled. Why is that? The number one reason is divorce. So if you want to keep your children out of a single parent family, the number one way to do that is to take your time, make a good choice, and stay married. But there are some situations where, again, through a death, the children end up being raised by a single parent, or maybe a divorce has to happen. So there's many different reasons. Can single parents be good parents? Absolutely they can. And those can be very good families also. But is it a little bit harder? Well, I think anyone that's a single parent will tell you it is. It's hard being parents when you have both of you to rely on. But when you only have a single parent, obviously they're stretched for time, stretched for money, and so frequently there are other issues. But they can also be very good families. And then couples without children. Are those considered a family? Yes, by the Census Bureau definition, they are related by birth, marriage, or adoption. They're related by marriage. So couples without children are still considered a family. And there are couples that they've just decided maybe they don't want children. They maybe don't have the financial stability to have children for whatever reason. And because we have much better birth control today, there are couples that are choosing not to have kids. But there are couples who just have raised their kids and the kids are gone. So there's a lot of couples today, married couples, so that actually the largest family group today in the census is couples without children, which is very different from what it was 50 years ago. So you can see there's so many different types of families today. So the book says because there are all these different types of families, all of us should be able to find one that suits us the best. Now, one of the things that we're going to talk about a lot over the semester is intimacy. And when we talk about intimacy, frequently people think that it means having sex. But that isn't what the book is talking about. The book is, when we talk about intimacy in marriage and family, we're talking about the ability to be close and connected to other people. And this is a crucial quality that we should all learn to be able to do. Well, what is the book's definition of intimacy? And the book's definition is being emotionally, intellectually, and when appropriate, physically close to another person. The reason they talk about 3 different areas that we have to be able to connect with another person in order to truly have the kind of intimacy that we all need. Because basically, all of us are three parts. We are our body, which is the physical. Obviously, we all have our bodies that go through life with. But we also have our feelings, that's our emotions. But we also have our thoughts, that's our intellectual ability. So the book really feels that in order to be totally, really connected, we have to be able to connect on all 3 of those levels. We have to be able to connect with all 3 parts of ourselves. Now, frequently what happens, especially with younger people, we tend to focus on the physical connection. And we're going to talk about that in the next few weeks, what causes you to be physically attracted to another person. But when you have a strong physical attraction to someone, it tends to take over. And it can be so intense that we tend to ignore the emotional and the intellectual. And that is such a common thing in relationships. And so a lot of times people will make a decision to commit to a relationship when they're in the very beginning, when the physical attraction and connection is very intense. But we all know, if you've been in a relationship for a length of time, that that always cools off. And if you don't have an emotional connection, if you can't talk about your feelings to each other, and if you can't talk about your thoughts and your ideas to each other, once the physical starts to cool off, what do you have? And that's why you frequently hear people say that they're married, but they're lonely. And that's because they haven't been able to connect on all 3 levels. So in order to really be intimate the way that we all need to be, is to be able to connect on all 3 levels. So you need to be able to have that physical connection. You also need to be able to share your feelings, but you also be able to share your thoughts and ideas and have those accepted and validated. Now, is this easy? No. We can talk about this and define it. That doesn't mean it's easy to achieve, because it isn't. What gets in the way of us being able to be close to one another? There's a lot of reasons. Maybe some of us grew up in families where there wasn't a lot of closeness and connection. And if you did not learn that from your family of origin, it's probably going to be difficult for you to understand what it is as you get older and seek it in an adult relationship. Where do we learn intimacy? It doesn't come out of the air. We are all born needing intimacy. And they know that. If you've ever taken a psychology class, you know that there have been studies of children that have been left in orphanages. And those children, if they have not been held and loved and talked to, that some of them die. And some of them don't ever have the ability to attach to another person. A lot of them have abandonment and attachment issues for the rest of their life. So they've studied children that don't have a lot of connection to adults in early life, and they know that causes great damage. So from that, we've learned that we all need connection. We all need intimacy with each other. But again, where does it start? We learn it in the beginning from our parents and from our family of origin. Again, you can see why those people are so important. So hopefully, your family of origin has taught you some level of intimacy. If not, it may be difficult, but that doesn't mean you can't learn about it and be good at it as you get older. You can learn it from other families, you can learn it from other relatives, from grandparents, you can learn it from your best friend's family, you can learn it from some, even as you go to work, as you begin to get older and get a job, you can learn it from the people at your job. There are so many ways that you can learn to be connected with good, healthy people. So just because you didn't have a lot of it in your family of origin doesn't mean that you can't have it and learn about it and be good at it later on in life. So intimacy is a crucial thing. If you didn't get enough of it in your family, then now's the time to seek it out. Find the people that are able to be connected. Find the people that are able to be intimate and close with one another, and spend time with those people. And the more time you spend with them, the more you will be able to get comfortable with that closeness. And again, if you didn't have that in your family of origin, this may not be comfortable to you at first, but the more you do it, the more people you're around that are able to do that, the more comfortable you will become with it. So don't give up. You can learn a pretty healthy level of intimacy and closeness later on, even if you didn't get it from your family of origin. But obviously, if you had it from the time you were born with your parents and your siblings, it's going to be a lot more comfortable and easy for you as you get older and seek it in your adult relationships. But we all need intimacy. Now, the other thing that can get in the way, what if you've been hurt? If you've been hurt, if you've extended yourself and tried to get close to someone and they did something hurtful, or they left you, or they died, there's different things that can happen in a relationship that can really be hurtful. And if you've been hurt because you've extended yourself to someone, tried to get close, and it didn't work out, or you got hurt, we frequently put up walls. And that's a very common difficulty in our intimate relationships. Again, that is a hurdle that we can all overcome. We all get hurt. And that doesn't mean that there aren't good, trustworthy people out there that you can get close to. And that's part of maturing and becoming an adult, is learning who you can extend yourself to and who you should not. There are people that are trustworthy, that are caring and loving, and we all get hurt. But if you can find someone who is essentially a caring, loving person, they may still hurt your feelings sometimes, but they're not going to hurt you to such an extent that you're damaged. So you want to look for people that have come from loving families, that have the ability to be close and caring. And if you can do that, you can still overcome some of your hurts. So again, there are roadblocks. There are difficulties with intimacy. If it was easy, everybody be having great relationships, and they're not. So intimacy can be a difficult thing. We're not saying it's easy, but it's so crucial. If you can have that in your family with your own children, then they're going to grow up and be able to do that easier in their own family with their children. So to learn to be able to be, and if you haven't had it with your family, with your own parents, one of the most wonderful things is being able to do it with your own children, because children are so innocent and they love their moms and dads. And when they're little, they're so usually affectionate and loving. And so if you didn't have a lot of that with your own parents, the most wonderful thing is, if you do get children, is that you can have it with your own children. And that's a wonderful experience. So we can find intimacy in lots of different relationships, but it is important, because when we have intimacy, when we care about one another, we tend to look out after each other. We tend to care and make sure that everyone is okay. We tend not to only do that with our family members, but with our own neighbors. We tend to look out for our neighbors. We tend to look out for the people in our community. So being able to connect with others and to find that closeness, the closer you are to someone and the more connected you are, the more likely you are going to try to help them, protect them. And so again, that makes much healthier families and communities. So intimacy is a crucial, crucial part of becoming a healthy adult. Now, and the very last thing in the outline is our definition of a sociopath, which I talked about briefly for chapter 1. Again, a person without a fully developed conscience. And these people are dangerous people. They hurt others, they hurt themselves, they hurt society. And you can see now why the family is such a crucial thing. To have a healthy family, to socialize children properly. We don't want a society full of sociopaths, people that just run around hurting each other. Um, that is um, a very unstable um, society. So it's so important that we take family seriously, that we take parenting and the importance of family, a healthy family, seriously. Now, do all of us have a perfect family? No, we don't. But hopefully, a lot of you have not started this journey yet. A lot of you, I'm sure, are thinking about someday finding a partner. Some of you maybe already have. Some of you maybe already have children. But if not, some of you may be thinking someday you will. So now's the time to really think about, how can I do this the best way possible? How can I be the best parent and the best partner? So hopefully some of the things in our class through the semester will give you the tools to know how to do that in a healthy way. Doesn't mean perfect, but hopefully in a fairly healthy way. Because as you can see, it's not just going to be important for you, it's going to be important for all of society. So hopefully from chapters 1 and 2, you can see that families are so crucial. In fact, really, if you've had a good family, you're ahead of everybody, because families are really everything. A lot of us do have a few good friends that we can rely on, but when it really comes down to it, families are the people that we are really there for us. And so if you came from a healthy family, you're very lucky, and family is everything. It gives us stability, it gives society stability. If you didn't, you certainly can learn how you can build one now. So hopefully this gives you an overview of chapters 1 and 2, and you can do your homework assignment for chapter 1. Again, is to take the list of the 8 qualities that good families need and tell me for each quality if it was weak or strong in your family of origin, in the family you were raised in, and give me one example. So hopefully this gives you a better understanding of chapters 1 and 2, and you'll be ready for your quiz. So look over your notes and read your chapter, and you should do just fine on your first quiz.